Hi there, Linda Stern here at the Stern Family Art Collection with John Stern. Today we're speaking about a very unusual painting in our collection. This painting, try to center it, was done by Elizabeth Borglum. She was married to Gutzon Borglum, who carved Mount Rushmore. She was an early cougar, about 15 years older than him. But here's John Stern to give you really the scoop.
Hello. As you can see, this is a small painting. Measures about 4 inches by 9 inches. And it's a beautiful little sunset with a figure and a dog walking into the sunset. It's very much in the Barbizon style. It's not an Impressionist painting at all. So it was painted by Elizabeth Borglum, at least that's how it's signed, but her full name was Elizabeth James Putnam Borglum. So she was married a couple times. She was born in Wisconsin, and she was a music and art teacher who came to California in 1881 and settled in Riverside. In 1882, she moved to Los Angeles. She was, in fact, one of the earliest professional painters here, about the same time as Elmer Wachtel, and they were friends. And she survived not by selling art at the time. There was not enough people in LA, but she taught art. So she was a very popular art teacher. In 1885, she met a young art student named John Gutzon Borglum, who was 17 years younger, and he began taking lessons with him. At the time, Gutzon was a painter and specialized in painting historical subject. They came to be very close. In 1889, they were married. So they were two of the most important artists in early Los Angeles. They had a big social life. She taught and he painted. One of his paintings was bought for the Metropole Hotel in Avalon, and when the hotel burned down in 1915, the painting was destroyed. But there are still some very good historical paintings by Borglum that can still be seen. So in 1883, they set up a studio in Sierra Madre near Pasadena, and that's where she taught most of her students. They traveled a lot. They were very big world travelers. In 1896, they spent a couple years in London. In 1902, they were back in Europe for 2 or 3 years. But in Paris in 1902, there was a big argument and they separated. They did not get divorced until 1908. So she came back alone, kept the name Borglum, and continued her art teaching in Venice, California, where she died in 1921. While they were in Paris on that 1902 trip where they got separated, Gutzon began taking lessons with Auguste Rodin, the sculptor. So even though he was a painter and a well-known painter in his day, he decided he'd rather become a sculptor. And that's what he did. Eventually, he gained international fame between 1927 and 1941, carving the presidential figures in Mount Rushmore. He died in 41 before it was completed, but his son, Lincoln Borglum, completed it. It wasn't actually fully completed, but he finished it until it looked like the way it is today. So that's Elizabeth Borglum, very interesting early artist in Los Angeles that had a famous name, Borglum.
Well, John, tell us a little bit more about this Barbizon style, as this is kind of looks like a plein air painting, but it's not like some of the plein air paintings that we've been showing before with bright colors and sunshine, backlit, this or that. It's it's a much more tonal, moody painting.
Well, that's Barbizon. Barbizon is a small village outside of Paris where a group of artists in the 1840s, long before Impressionism, decided to get together, live there, and paint the outdoors. They actually painted what they saw. They painted on plein air, and they are the first artists to actually paint a tree that the way it actually existed. And prior to that, if you wanted a tree, you just put in any kind of tree in the background because that wasn't the important subject. But with the Barbizon painters, the forest, the tree, the light, the sky, those were important. They are not Impressionists because their color is very subdued. They are tonalist, like you said, Linda. There are very few colors, but there are lots and lots of tones of those colors. So the younger artists, the Impressionists in the 1860s, really liked what the Barbizon painters were doing because they were not painting all this mythological and Roman history themes. They were painting what actually was there. In essence, the forest, the trees, the land, the people. So they decided that they too were going to paint exactly what they saw and not create some kind of fantastic subject that would be appealing to the masses. But they also decided to use a lot brighter colors, and they began using lots and lots of colors and began to use them in a scientific approach where they put opposite colors next to each other or nearby to heighten the contrast and make the light really jump. So this is before Impressionism, and it is a type of painting that's called either Barbizon or tonal, and it was the most popular style in California in the north, in San Francisco, from say about the gold rush to actually it went into the 1900s before Impressionist painters began to paint that way in San Francisco. But it was in LA much earlier than that, and it was in Laguna Beach much earlier than that. They were painting Impressionist paintings in LA as early as the mid-1890s.
Well, even the Barbizon painters, they could only go outside to paint after the discovery and invention of the collapsible paint tube. And I know that you've lectured on this quite a bit, that there were several failed attempts to put paints in hypodermic needles and all kinds of pig bladders and things. But once they had the collapsible paint tube, weren't the Barbizons the first ones to take it outside and use it?
Yes, they were the ones that did it almost routinely. Before that, people might sketch outside very quickly or use watercolors or certainly pencils, but they would not sit there and paint the entire painting. The Barbizon artists did that, and this is another thing the Impressionists really decided that was what they wanted to do. So the collapsible paint tube, invented in 1841 by an American artist named John Rand, opened up to plein air painting as we know it today. So it's the same tube that artists use today. You've got to be sure to cap it, otherwise the paint will dry when you're not squeezing paint out of it.
Oh, and remember everybody, it's like toothpaste. Don't squeeze from the middle, you'll miss half the paint.
Exactly.
So anyway, that's your art lesson for today. We're happy that you could join us and take in this very delightful small painting, as you can see, but with a big history and a lot of fine art. So buy paintings, enjoy painting, and stay safe out there. And we'll see you again in our next episode of Art with the Sterns.
Take good care. Stay indoors. Bye-bye.